Welcome to our security and sandwiches today for the month of April. Today we're going to be covering Milestone advanced topics. We're going to go over exporting, evidence lock, alarm manager, and smart wall. And then if we get some time at the end, we'll look at some other things and answer questions that you have and so on. Before we get started, a couple house items. Lunch will be provided to you today. It will be delivered at right about noon at your local time zone if you are at one of the local Stone Security offices. If you're joining us remotely, sorry, but no lunch coming to you today, but we'd love to see you at an office and hope that you make it there next month. If you want to come back and revisit some of the information that we cover in this presentation, we will be posting it to YouTube afterwards. So look for it there on Stone Security's YouTube channel. All of our previous months are there as well, and this one will join that shortly. After the session today, if you registered with an email address to attend through Eventbrite, you will get an email with a survey. We'd love for you to fill out that survey. Tell us what you liked about the event, what you didn't like about the event, how we can improve, really anything you want there. And we will randomly pick people from that survey, and you can win a swag pack raffle. So let's see, next is, given the online format, we have people both in person at Stone offices as well as a collection of people online. So if you have questions during today's session, just hold those to the end. Drop them in the chat along the way as you go so that if you need to, you don't forget your question. If it's pertinent to what we're talking to right now, we may pause and address that quickly as we move through. But we'll save some time afterwards and for sure get to questions after. All right, and with that takes care of all our housekeeping. Last item, I guess, is I'll introduce myself. My name is Adam Winterton, and we're coming to you today from our Global Technology Center in Las Vegas. Next time you're in Vegas, come by, come visit, come check out what we've got going on here. But anything that Stone Security does and sells, we try to have that here and demo that here so that you can come and play with it and be hands-on, and we can kind of learn together and figure things out. So it's a great opportunity to come and see the new tech and what else we can do to help. All right, so with that, let me get my screen shared here, and we're gonna get started straight away. We'll jump right into Milestone. Today, we're gonna start with exporting, and then we're gonna segue from exporting into evidence lock. Exporting is a really common thing that a lot of people do in Milestone. And it can be really simple or it can be really complex, depending on how long of a segment you're trying to export. If you're just trying to grab 3 minutes from a single camera, it's about as easy as it gets. But if you're trying to follow maybe a suspect who moved all throughout a facility, causing damage and vandalism as they move through a facility, then it gets a little more complex. But Milestone's got a pretty simple and intuitive way of handling that. And we're gonna look at that. So first thing that we want to do is we need to pick an event. And we need to pick an event that's going to be kind of memorable. So what I wanted to do is we're going to leverage maps to kind of help build this. We're also going to leverage just some other cameras that we'll pull out as well. But if I grab my exterior camera, and I'm going to go back in time a little bit to, let's go to Monday. And McKay, when did our trailer come down here before ISC West? Monday night. Here, we'll go this way. All right. So let's find a time. Let me zoom out here. Actually, what would be better to do is this. Rather than try and start at the beginning, because who knows where the beginning of anything happens, right? Let's actually just kind of start in the middle. That'll be easier to find anyway, because now we can go inside our building, we can pull out a camera. So any camera on a map that you click and drag out to an empty tile, you can view that camera on a map. And so here we've got a bunch of people coming around. Monday, if we come through, we'll see pretty quick when that trailer comes in. And hopefully I'm on the right track here, thinking it was Monday. Yeah, I think it was already there by then. Let me pick a different camera. And let's go to here. We'll grab this camera out. All right, so we're looking for a big giant red thing. You know, we know it happened somewhere, but maybe we don't know exactly when it happened. This is a common scenario. We know something happened. We know generally what happened, like vandalism showed up on a wall or somebody broke a window, you know, whatever else there might have been. Oh, I think we're getting close here. Okay. And so these are good, this is good, you know, real life experience here, trying to make our way through and find specifically what we're looking for. And for those of you who haven't seen or don't know what I'm talking about, this trailer, you're like, what trailer? Stone Security released a new product line. It's a new division of Stone Security called mobilesecurity.net. And mobilesecurity.net is it's a mobile security trailer that we have built from the ground up. And we've used our experience over the years with different trailers and different platforms to try and basically solve some of the problems that we saw in that market, in that industry, and come up with some solutions and what we feel is actually a really good product that is gonna serve the market really well. So we can get more into the details on that in a further conversation if you want to know more about those trailers. Patrick posted a link about them if you're curious. This was the one thing I did not do before our session, was finding the exact time. So I'm okay, so there we're moving the racks. It's gotta be right around here somewhere. Did I miss it? Oh, there we go. I told you, you can't miss it. It's a big giant red thing. Okay, so we found it. So we have kind of a starting place for now what we're looking for. All right, so if this was the only camera we cared about, here's how we would export. Okay, we're gonna kind of get an idea. All right, it comes into the camera scene right about there. I'm gonna zoom in on my timeline, so instead of looking at 10 minutes across, I'm looking at 1 minute. All right, so we start to see it happen here. 10:16 a.m. on the 8th. And this camera goes all the way through, and then it is gone right there. Okay, so 10:17. So really only a couple minutes. And so what we do is we're going to, first we need to tell Milestone what we care about, the time frame. We also need to tell Milestone which cameras we care about. So on your Milestone, there's two little buttons down here on the left-hand side of your timeline. The first one is set start and end time on the timeline itself. And the second one is set start and end time in calendar. So the calendar one is gonna pop up a calendar, and you physically put in the date for the start and the date for the end and the time for the start and the time for the end. If you're just being really quick, easiest way is actually just use the first button here, and that's gonna pop up on your timeline a set of selection brackets. And you'll notice as I drag my selection bracket around, my start bracket, my video is updating. With the video updating, I can see right where that happens. We're gonna actually just dial back to right when Christian there turns to come into the room. Okay, and we're gonna continue that all the way through. Let's drag this over, drag our bracket over. We're gonna pull this guy over, keep going, and we'll end it right there as the last thing disappears. Okay? So we've told Milestone when we care about. Now we need to tell it what we care about. Up in the top right corner of the camera tile is a box. And that box will either have a check mark or not a check mark in it. So the check mark is how we tell Milestone which cameras we care about. If we're looking at a view that has multiple cameras, you'll notice that we can check multiple boxes. So we could, if we wanted to, we could come and say, okay, I want this camera as well. And let's grab this camera. And we could say, I want these 3 cameras. We'll not do this bottom one because its timeline is going to be different. Yeah, it will do it. It gets kind of right there. Okay, we'll address the scenario that just brought up in just a moment. Okay, but we're going to say, let's grab these 3 cameras, and we've got our start and end time. We've got our checkboxes selected. Now we're going to export it. So you have an export button. Depending on which version you're running, your export button is going to be either up here on the top bar, or if you're this moved, I believe, starting in 2023 R1. Prior to that, the button was down in the bottom right corner of your screen. So if it doesn't look exactly like mine does, that's just a version difference. Functionality is going to be the same though. So I'm going to click my export drop down, and I'm going to click export. This is going to pull in my cameras into a new window. And I can preview what I have in there. I can click play. We can see from this camera angle the trailer coming in. We can check it all the way to the end. There it is going out. We can do the same thing on this one. There we go. There it is. If we want, we can even make adjustments. So as we select these cameras, we have time selection brackets that show up. So I can actually come and I can shift these over, and we can change the portion of this camera that we're looking at. So this is a really easy way to tweak and do this on the fly and make adjustments as you go. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. Okay, next, we'll do the same thing. All right, that's the one we were working off to begin with. That one looks good too. If you wanted to split a segment of video, say we have an event that happened and then a lot of nothing and then an event that happened, we don't have to export that a lot of nothing. There is a button here on our camera list that shows the start time and the end time that allows us to split. It's going to split at where our cursor is. Okay, let me do this, for example, let's do it on this camera. We'll drag that back out, okay, and we'll say, all right, right there is where it comes in. I'm going to split it right there. Actually, I misspoke. Yeah, it did. Okay, so the split did happen at the start, but it did trim the tail end of the first one. So you'd want to come back and check. But you could say, hey, we don't really care about that nothingness that happened there. We're going to pull this further back. And now we have a section that is going to be here and a section that'll be towards the end of that there. Okay. Turns out maybe we don't care about that split that we made and the section that we trimmed out. So we're going to just hit the delete button on that, and that makes that disappear. So we pretty much have identified and defined a milestone, the time, what we care about, and the cameras. And now we need to tell Milestone, what do we want to do with our export? We have several options. You can export as, I'll list these off and then we'll talk through each one of them. Milestone XProtect format, media player format, and still images. And you'll notice as I enabled each of those, Milestone is trying to calculate the size of my export. Okay, let's talk about what these are. Milestone XProtect format keeps the video in Milestone's native format. It's block files that are not usable by themselves. You need the Smart Client player in order to view them. That player is included with your export, and there's other benefits that come from this format of the export as well. It includes, or can include, digital signatures. It maintains everything in a multi-tile layout with a timeline with all the videos synchronized together. It's going to be generally your smallest file size and your fastest export. The drawback is there is not a Mac compatible player for Milestone Smart Client. And so if you have to send this video export to somebody who uses a Mac, they're not going to be able to view it unless they're running Windows with Parallels or some other method on their machine. But this is the format that's going to stand up in court the most. It will be harder to challenge legally, and it includes the digital signatures necessary for a forensics expert to come in and say, this is verified as untampered, unmodified, unchanged, and that can extend all the way from the camera to the version of the video that you give somebody on a thumb drive and they're looking at right then and there. So the whole process can be covered by that digital signature tracing. Okay, let's talk about the next format. Media player format. Media player format is going to, and actually let me do this. As I talk through these, let me select them, hit export settings. Let's talk through the rest of these options. We'll loop back to the rest of the options in XProtect format. With the media player format, this is going to be a video file that's playable on any device. So on a media player format, the content we can specify, we can say video only, video and audio. Now, if there's no microphones active in your system, enabling audio is not going to help much. Generally, most of the time, most people do video only because there's no audio there. But if you have audio and you need to include that in your export, make sure to choose video and audio. All right, format. These are different formats that your video file can be in. MKV is going to be the file size most similar to, and the resolution and quality most similar to Milestone's native format. And so it is generally your go-to, your preferred method. AVI is going to require that your computer transcode that video from Milestone's native format into that AVI. Has to transcode it with the MKV as well, but it's a much faster transcode. With AVI, you're going to get huge file sizes. Okay? And it's going to take significantly longer to complete the export because that transcode is a more detailed process. Whether you use the Microsoft Video 1 codec or the Intel IUV codec, or if you've got other codecs available on your system, generally just the default Microsoft Video 1 is fine. What this is going to mainly do is affect the quality of the export. You can play with it and see if there's a different one that you like, or if there's a specific codec that you need. It is possible to install additional codecs to expand the functionality of the formats that you can export to. But I always caution personally, I caution against using AVI unless there's a very specific reason to do it. If you must have media player format, MKV should be your go-to. Overall, your go-to for an export format should be the XProtect format. Okay, and we're going to come back and talk about these options in a moment. You can include timestamps on the media player format for some of the options. I can include it on an AVI. It lets me check that box. I can also reduce the frame rate on an AVI. It lets me check that box. But if I change to an MKV, both of those options are grayed out, and I cannot enable or change them. So even though there's a checkbox here, it's grayed out. That checkbox is remnant from when I was in the AVI format. MKV does not allow the modification of the video in any way. So no timestamps, no reducing of the frame rate, but it's going to be your closest approximation to the quality of what Milestone's going to give you natively. All right, let's talk about another thing with the media player format. If I have 3 cameras, at a minimum, I'm going to get 3 video files. Now, there are file size limitations that these codecs have. So when I hit that file size limitation on the codec, it's going to split that file into multiple files, that video into multiple files. So if I have several hours of video across multiple cameras, I'm going to get a lot of files really quick. You even get more with the AVI because the AVI has a larger file size, and so you hit that limit a lot faster than you would on an MKV. Generally on an MKV, you can get several hours worth of video before you get a split. On an AVI, it's probably maybe, depending on the resolution of the video, the frame rate, anywhere between probably a half hour and an hour. At some point in there, you're going to start to get splits. And so we'll look at what these look like. And so we'll actually do these exports, and we'll then look at the results. OK, still images. Kind of a random option for how you would want to export video. Keep in mind, video is a sequence of still images that get stitched together. So if I have a camera that's recording at 15 frames per second, if I'm exporting 1 second of video, I'm going to get 15 still images. If I'm recording at 15 frames per second and I export 2 seconds of video, I'm going to get 30 pictures. 3 seconds, 4 seconds, I'm going to get 60 pictures. So you can see how that's going to start to stack up. If you're trying to export still images and you're doing it over a long period of time, you're going to get thousands upon thousands of images. There is a purpose for this, though, and I'll tell you how at least I have used it in the past. The way that I've used still images is if I am doing a time lapse of a construction project or something. So this is common for universities, and we can do a whole training session on this separately. But for a university, you've got new construction going on all the time. Let's say there's a new building going up, and the donors are like, we want to see the progress. We want to see what it looks like. So you set up a camera in Milestone. You might take that camera and split it into two, so you're activating 2 different feeds from that camera. One of them is going to be your general security purpose camera. We're going to keep that our typical 30 days or whatever. Make sure that, if a crane falls or somebody crashes, something happens, we're going to capture that footage and have it follow our normal process. On that second camera, though, on that second feed, we might say, we're going to record this one at maybe 1 frame per second. Depending on how long our construction project is, we need to kind of estimate that. You might say it's going to be maybe 1 frame every 30 minutes. And so when you get a year down the road, you take those still images, you take that video and you export it as still images, and now I have a sequence of a frame for every 30 minutes that then I can pull into separate software and turn that into a time lapse. So again, that can get detailed and kind of tricky. We can go into that at a future date, but just so you know, there are purposes for still images, but they're few in between. Media player format, we went over. XProtect format. So let's talk about the options here in XProtect format. When you create an XProtect format, it can only be opened by the XProtect Smart Client Player. We talked about that. We are going to generally by default include that player. There may be some situations where you don't, and then there's still ways to view that video if you have the player already on your machine from another installation, or even just your regular smart client. You can use that to open the project. But generally, you're going to include the smart client player. Prevent re-export. We've talked about this in the past, but let me tell you the context of this prevent re-export option. This is not from the context of, I have a section of video and I'm going to export it, and I don't want anybody else from my full Milestone production system to export that video again. That's not the context of this option. The context of this is centered around the export that I created itself and that I gave someone else. So that export that exists on that thumb drive, that's what is going to restrict re-export of the content that's in there. Because you might give somebody a selection of video, and they start looking at it and they go, I'm going to trim this section out, I'm going to trim this section out, and we're going to get rid of this camera altogether. We're going to re-export that and send it on, and now we've got a whole different story, a whole different context. So if you want to prevent that, this is the checkbox that you want to make sure you have enabled. Okay, encrypt with a password. This is to say, when I start my export, it's going to prompt me to enter a password. It's going to use that password that I enter to encrypt and hash all of my video files. So you cannot view, tamper, dig into the weeds, dissect anything that export unless you have that password to decipher that encryption. Just don't forget your password, because there is no back-end way of retrieving it or resetting it or whatever. It's stuck on that file. If you lose your password to that file, you've got to go back and hope you still have the original video to re-export again. Include digital signatures. This is the method of saying, I can verify start to end that this camera hasn't been tampered with anywhere along the way. Okay. All right, so we are going to do, for time's sake, we'll do MKV. I'm not going to do still images. We'll uncheck that box. We've got 3 cameras here. It's a total of 3 minutes and 31 seconds. And Milestone estimates that between these 2 formats, it's going to be about 453 megabytes. So let's hit create. It's going to say, give it a name. Let's give it a name. We're going to call this security and sandwiches export demo. Okay, and we'll give it a comment. Testing export functionality. And I'm going to specify location. I'm just going to put it on my desktop just for ease. Okay. If you wanted to, you could burn it straight to a disk. I'd say exercise caution in doing that, though. Milestone's estimate is generally pretty close. But if you're burning it to a disk and you're getting right there towards the size limit of your disk, it might say it'll fit, and then you get all the way through the process of burning the whole disk for it to fail in the last 30 seconds because you were just 10 megs short, right? So my recommendation and just general practice is export locally to your computer and then separately burn it to the disk. You'll have a better experience doing that. I understand maybe some policies don't let you do that. In that case, just be conscious of the space and how much space you have on your disk, and make sure that you give yourself a little bit of extra buffer just in case the file size ends up being a little bit larger. Because again, it's transcoding, it's an estimate. We don't actually know what that transcoded video is going to come out to be in the end until you get it. All right, so I'm going to hit export, and we're going to get this started. And we're going to come back to a question that's in the chat. All right, so Jeff asks, in the past when exporting an AVI, if there was a blank, no video time, that motion did not activate. The AVI export filled the blank time with copies of the last frame. Does this still happen? Yes, it does. And that's a great question. I'll explain it this way. You've got a sequence of video, a blank space, and a sequence of video. And I'm exporting from the beginning to the end with that gap in the middle. Milestone doesn't have a way, it's not even a Milestone issue, it's a capability of the codec. There's no way to put null video or no video inside of a video file. And so we have video, and so what the export does is it takes the last frame of that image, and then it's going to extend that across the gap. The challenge with this is that if you take that to somebody and they say, this happened, this happened, this happened, or didn't happen, you show them that video, and there's an assumption made that that gap, nothing happened because we didn't record it. Well, maybe that's not true. Maybe our camera just didn't record it. Maybe it was motion, but not enough motion to trigger it. And so it does freeze that frame through the duration of that gap. So if you get that, that's where splitting is going to come in handy. Take that, split it out. Here's this segment. Split it out. Here's another segment. So now you've got a segment for each one. There's no video in between, so there's nothing to put there. But that might be better than saying, here's a video that shows this frame that didn't actually represent reality during that period of time. That's a great question, Jeff. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, our export is done. Let's see. So On the newer functions, there's a restore export list. So if you ever make an export and you're like, I need to do that export and I need to do it again, but add in a couple more cameras, you can click restore, and it's going to pull all of those. Basically, it's going to pull everything back into the export list, and we can just pick up right where we left off. So that's a nice feature. I think that's a 2023 R3 feature that came in. I don't recall seeing that in R2 or R1. Export details. I do this all the time. Export's done, I go get a snack, I come back and I'm like, where did I save it? Dang it. If you click on export details, it's gonna tell you, one, where you saved it with a nice little link. It's also gonna tell you the format, the cameras, and the message of whether that succeeded or failed. So let's click the link. It's gonna take us right there. So here's my desktop, here's the SNS export demo that we talked about. It puts everything in its own folder. I'm gonna jump into there, okay? So here is my folder. Media player format, that looks familiar. We saw that as an option. Let's look at that first. If I jump into media player format, we had 3 cameras. Why do I only have 2 cameras? Was one of them the same camera? Oh, do you know what? Because, all right. I have 2 cameras with the same name. All right, and that's just because I haven't identified which one is camera 1, which one's looking at the lobby, which one's looking the other way. This is the multi-sensor camera that we just installed right before ISC West, so I need to go back and clean that up a little bit. But because those are the same name, Windows doesn't let you have 2 folders of the same name. So I'm betting that it just combined those two cameras into the same folder. So there's one, there's the other. From the thumbnail, we can see that those are from different angles, okay? Normally, you've got 3 cameras in your export, you're gonna get 3 cameras that show up, or 3 folders that show up in your export folder structure. Here's the corner, there's our 1 video file. Again, if this had continued and extended for a couple hours, we might potentially see multiple files. Let me click and play one, we'll open this, media player, that works great. Or VLC is a really great way as well. Just because it's on everybody's computer already, by default, we'll use media player. This is an MKV again, by the way. There we go. And we can see it moving in. There's Mr. Andy, carefully guiding a trailer in through our opening, and there it goes all the way through. Now, notice there's no timestamp. It may look a little fuzzy on the Teams video, but for those of us looking at it here in the room, it is crystal clear, same quality as what we had on the camera, straight in Milestone by itself. Downside is, each camera is its own file. And we can play them individually, but there's not really a great way to sync them together without pulling them into a third software, maybe, Adobe Premiere Pro or something, and then editing them into tiles. That gets messy. And then it's going to be argued that you edited the video, and the video is not going to be very useful. Okay. All right. So we've covered that one. Let's jump back to, and by the way, let me just show this real quick. So we'll go to Properties. The MKV was 176 megabytes. So it's about half the size of my full export. Had this been AVI, we probably would have been well over 2 or 3 gig, somewhere in that ballpark. All right, media play client files. The XProtect format is the client files, the auto run, and the smart client player. If I had unchecked that box, all we would have is media player format. The rest of this is tied to the XProtect format. You can browse through client files, get in see what's there, poke around. It's a bunch of system files. This is all related to the smart client player. Here's the data, okay, media data. Oh, okay, we see camera folders. This looks familiar. Let's go a little further. All right, let's see. We've got some XMLs, a sync key, another folder. Now we've got some non-friendly named folders. We go in further. Okay, we've got some IDX files. We've got more IDX. There's nothing in here that is usable in a standalone situation, all right? So let's come back to Smart Client Player. Now I'm gonna minimize in the background, we're gonna close this, I'm gonna minimize my Smart Client, and we're gonna run the Smart Client Player. We're gonna see pretty easy here what this looks like. So far, Milestone Smart Client splash screen, we've seen this before. If we had requested a password, it would right now be prompting us for that password. Once this comes up, we're gonna have a window that, lo and behold, looks exactly like our Smart Client. Here's the message that we put in on the export comments, testing export functionality for the project. And Milestone has added a new adaptive view. So if you have a lot of cameras in an export, we'll look at this in a little bit, but for now I'm gonna dismiss it. We've got our timeline. We only have playback. There's no live option. There's no live tab because we're not connected to a live system. And we have all 3 videos there in full quality, fully time synced together with the video. And if there are any gaps, for example, this camera, the recording there doesn't start until this point, those are all noted and everything's maintained just as it was when we had it. You can double click the camera to take it full screen. You can still click and drag to zoom in. You can rearrange them if there's a different order that makes better sense. Let's verify the signatures. Let's see if this is a secure export. Okay, so I'm gonna click verify, goes through, and we get green bar, and it tells us verified on everything, and I can click on the details. And here we have basically a certificate identity, a public key, a signature, and an algorithm. So this is all done with SHA 256, and this is a lot of computer jargon for basically, here's the thumbprint of this signature, of these files. And a forensics expert can come in and do a manual verification process to actually look at your files, look at the thumbprint, look at the details here, and sort that all out. And can, manually validate that these are, in fact, untampered. But Milestone does that work for us. It is possible to do the work in the back end. Okay, let's jump now to a more complicated situation. So we're gonna close this. No, I don't wanna save changes to that project. The change is where I rearranged things. So let's come back to Milestone, and we're gonna come back to our map. We're gonna do this export again. So wait for my map to load. Here we go. I'm gonna click in, main floor. We're gonna start, we know we can start here. Okay, I'm gonna go back in my timeline to right there. Okay, let's start what Milestone calls storyboarding. And it's a very similar concept to storyboarding used in movies where they kind of outline each individual scene before they start filming. So what we're gonna grab our time selection bars, and we're going to run this all the way to the end. Okay, right there. We have just our one camera selected, and instead of going to export and export, we're gonna say add to export list. We get a little pop-up that verifies it was added to the export list. Okay, let's go the other direction. Let's go backwards now. So it pops up here. So I know I'm gonna want something before there. Let's get a different camera though. Let's grab this camera, okay? Nope, I want this one right there. Okay, so here we got another camera. Okay, let's grab from here. We're gonna get that all the way till it disappears out of the scene. We'll have some overlap between them. And let's roll this backwards. You see us squeezing it through there. It took a minute. And we can run that backwards all the time. I don't want to make the export too long for the purpose of the demonstration. So we're going to just mainly focus on its movement from there to there. We'll start it right there. Okay, same thing. I'm going to hit export. I'm going to go add to export list. Okay, let's go the other direction. Say we want to go back inside. So actually, let me check. I might have made a mistake. I did make a mistake. Okay, let's, I'll own up to my mistake and I'll show you what I did. I did not check my box. So all this video out here that we just added, we don't want that. That's garbage. We're gonna come back. And of course, because I changed away from my map, we lost our camera, but that's easy to get back. So we want this camera here, click and drag it out. I'm gonna check the box. I still have my time bracket selected, so all I need to do is now just tell it to add to the export list. Okay, moving on the other direction now for sure. All right, so we come in the doors. We're gonna show up on this camera right here. We already did the one, so let's grab this one. Let's move our brackets over to there. And we're gonna grab just that section there because that's where we see trailer. Adjust our start. Same thing, check the box. I can double click back out to verify, nope, I don't want any more of that one. I just want this one. And export, add to export list. Okay. Now we're gonna select a different camera. So let's go back to our map. We're gonna grab this guy. Get a nice tight view of that. Check the box because I'm right off the bat because I know that's the one I'm gonna want. And there we start to come around the corner. And there it's out of scene. My box is selected, export, add to export list. And you can basically just keep going all the way through a facility, adding each individual camera that you need, only the time frames that you need that camera for, and you can build a storyboarded export. Okay, check my box, export, add to export list. And let's get one more coming into the main space over here. We'll come grab this guy, see if the trailer crosses it. Yep, sure does. Okay, so we're gonna come grab our start. Let's start it there. And we'll go till it gets out of scene, and we'll end it right there. Check my box, export, add to export list. Okay, so we've done all that work. Let's go to exports. So it's a tab in the newer versions. In maybe some of the older versions, it's the drop down that will take you there and get you to what you need. So export, here's my list. We can verify, same process we did before. All the sequences that we cared about and want. Okay, this time I'm only gonna do XProtect format because we've seen what the media player format does. And we're gonna say export. We're gonna call this SNS demo 2. Not gonna give it a name this time. We'll put it on the desktop again. I'll hit export and it's gonna run. And that'll take a minute to go because it's a little bit more video. All right, so I'm gonna do something else here. I am going to, let's see if we can use our export that we just built. Let's restore the export list. And let's see if we can evidence lock it. I'm not sure if this will work or not. It did not give us the whole list. Let's clear it. Clear and restore. I think we restored the first one initially. There we go. Now we've got our whole list. Okay. So to create a evidence lock. So we're gonna go to evidence lock. We're gonna go to create. Okay, it's gonna make us define it. So what Milestone should do, and it has been a feature request, is the ability to say, here's my export. This is what I want. I want these items to also go to an evidence lock. So what we'll do is, just to make this quick, let's grab a camera. We'll just do it with one so you can see what that looks like. There it is. So time selection bracket. And there's the start. And we'll call that the end right there. Perfect. Evidence lock, create. So if you've got multiple cameras, then you would have multiple boxes selected. Create. We're gonna call this trailer being moved in. description, whatever you want. Oftentimes people say on here, being used for an investigation. And because it's our trailer, I'm going to say of awesomeness. Okay? And we've got our interval selected. Now, how long do we want to keep this for? Let me explain what an evidence lock is going to do. Your Milestone system, as video comes in, it's assigning it a birthday. And it gets a birthday every day. And when that video is 30 birthdays old for 30 days retention, that video is now dead and gone. Unless your rules are set to, your retention is set to 45 days or 60 days or whatever it might be. Once your video hits it's called aged out. Once your video has aged out of your retention, it's gone and there's no getting it back. An evidence lock is a mechanism in Milestone to say, ignore, for this video that we've selected, this block of video, ignore my retention profiles. Keep that video for as long as I have specified. So I can say for a day. Now, if I've got 30 days of video and this video is only 10 days old, an evidence lock of a day isn't going to do anything. Okay? If my video is 29 days old, a day would get me another day and let me go past my 30 days by a day. All right, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. Keep it for a year. All right. And create video playback restriction. So we'll check that box and see what that does. And let's create. All right, restriction created successfully. Tells us the details of that, the cameras, and everything there. All right, we're gonna hit close and close. And now if I were logged in as a different user, I would not be able to view this video because I created a video restriction to it. That's what that checkbox does. So if somebody in a different role gets word of, hey, I heard this thing happened, and let's go look at the cameras and see, let's find out, then creating that video restriction is going to prevent them from doing that. We can view, here's our video restrictions, the trailer being moved in. You can see who it was created by. And so others not in my role are not going to be able to see this video. If we get time, I will log out and log in as a different user and you guys can see what that looks like. Okay. Let's look at our evidence lock. We can view evidence lock. Here is trailer being moved in. I can say, we can edit it, we can delete it, we can view it. We can also take our evidence lock straight to an export list. Yes, Jeff, that restriction is removable. Okay, so if we view it, here's the video that is contained in the evidence lock, and it is there. So evidence lock is a great way of ensuring if you have something really critical that happens, something like maybe a shooting on a campus or a violent act at an office building, something where you want to make sure you have that video and it's not going anywhere. You build an evidence lock around it. You say how long you want to keep it for, and it will stay. Now, there is a trade-off. The video is staying on your server at the same time. And so if you're already running lean on your server storage, adding a bunch of evidence locks is going to start affecting your overall retention because you run out of space, and it's going to prioritize the evidence locks. Then it prioritizes new video coming in. And so the old video where maybe you were 30 days, when you start to run that lean and you add in these evidence locks, and you continue to do that, these evidence locks start to basically take away that storage capacity, and your 30 days turns into 29 and 28 into 27. So just be aware if evidence lock is something you want to leverage, then it's good to build that into your storage calculations a little bit. And we'll, of course, help with that. It's just a discussion. A change that happened, I don't know when it happened exactly, but when evidence locks were first released, the video did not move from archive tier to archive tier. And so if it was in archive tier number 1, when you evidence locked it, it stayed there. Now, the behavior is evidence locks will move from archive tier to archive tier. So if you have a server with 30 days, that's what you're configured for. One thing you could do is say, I'm going to add another archive tier, which is a NAS. You know, we've got a bunch of storage somewhere else, different box. It's a NAS, it's a SAN, it's whatever. We're going to add that as a final archive tier, and we're going to set it to maybe 31 days. So we got 30 days on everything up front and 31 days on the tail end. All your video that's saved when it hits the 30 days is going to start moving to that new archive to be kept for 1 day. But what will happen is anything that's evidence locked, it's going to move, but then it's not going to get deleted, and it will stay, and your evidence locks will build up and grow in that final tier. So it's a great way of leveraging evidence locks without impacting your normal storage configuration, because you can allocate additional storage if you have that capability in your systems. We're going to look now at Alarm Manager. And we're going to cover this in the context of something that actually we've been struggling with here locally, and how we've actually worked to solve that problem a little bit. And so there's a lot going on here, and we're using alarms as a method of tracking some of this information. Okay, first, I'm going to show you the problem. This is what our garbage cans, our dumpsters look like on Sunday afternoon. Monday morning is our garbage pickup, and they don't pick them up unless the lids close. All right? So Sunday afternoon, this was getting this all configured and set up. This is what we come up with. There's some guys who basically start moving and shifting one entire dumpster into the other. Mind you, one is recycling and the other is trash. They're putting all the trash in the recycling. So it's like the worst direction to probably go. And then they leave. They pulled out what they wanted, scrap wire, whatever, and then they left the mess for us to deal with. This is not fun to have to come back and clean up. All right, and this is just an example of a million different solutions that you might come across. It could be a person trespassing in an area. It could be a piece of equipment being monitored by a thermal camera getting over temperature. It could be a door in your access control system being forced open. So any of the triggers and alerts that we have in Milestone, we can build into an alarm. So let me walk through. We're gonna have to transition here to the management client. All right, so there is a tab in your Smart Client player called Alarm Manager. And probably for most people, empty is what it looks like. And you look at that and you go, I don't know what that's supposed to do. All right. The alarm, these are also elements that you can create in a normal view. So we have, as part of alarms right here in our, so we're in setup mode, so we can actually modify and edit our views. We have an alarm list and an alarm preview. Okay, the alarm preview is, let me jump to a blank view really quick so I don't mess up what we got going on here. So here's a blank view. Here's my alarm list. It's a list of the alarms. And here's my preview. Okay? So when we're looking at this, we can click on it and we get the preview for what those alarms are. So those are elements that you can drop into a view, but you also have your alarm manager, which is probably where you'll work with most. All right. These come in generally first as a new alarm. And then you can trigger them to then be marked as in progress or on hold or closed. And you can specify, you can customize what these properties are, what these states are. So here's a couple that I've marked as on hold. Well, yeah, we'll start with on hold. All right. So there's a lot going on here. This is an alarm. Somebody was in the trash area outside of business hours. We used Access Object Analytics to detect them. Based on that initial detection, when outside of business hours, we set off lights. We've got a horn out there saying you're trespassing. If they stay for more than 5 seconds, now it's short because the object analytics tracking that person, sometimes it will not be persistent and it'll show them and then it'll disappear and it'll show them again as a person. So I kept it short so that if it's just even 5 seconds, they're in there. These guys move pretty quick. Then at that point, now we have a loud D4100 siren going off at full volume. We're flashing reds and blue, and we're playing back, the police are called and on their way message. All right, and you kind of saw that when we looked at it. So you see the light flash, and this is just the blue, and he didn't stick around for that. He stayed for only just a very brief moment. Let's go back and we'll play it from a little bit further out. You can see his car up here. You can see him come in, turns on his light. There was the detection. There's the lights going off. He's looking through the dumpster, goes over to the other dumpster, doesn't see what he wants, and he's gone before we hit that 5-second threshold. So we never get to the full escalation of our annoyance here. All right. Had we gotten that point, he wouldn't have stuck around long. We have this over and over and over again. People coming in, checking out the garbage can, looking around. Which guy is this? One of these guys thought he could get away with it by wearing a vest that says SWAT on it. So, that's not gonna really, here we go. So he's wearing a vest that says SWAT, and this guy actually he gets the full force of everything. Now it's daytime, so the lights flashing aren't as noticeable as they are at night. You can see them up on there on the wall. They are bright. You saw that go off. Now watch him as he gets out of scene here. He's gonna go get in his car, and here's how we know it's working. Bye. All right. So, it's a garbage can. This is a menial thing, right? But little things like this are real problems for people. And it takes time and resources and energy to go and fix the problem. So let's automate the solution. Alarms lets us do that. Now we have to define what the alarm is. A lot of this can happen just with a rule. I can have a rule that says, when this happens, do this. And in fact, I do have a rule that says, when this happens, when I have a person detection inside of this garbage can zone, and I'm outside of office hours, do this series of actions. There's a second rule that says, when I get that 5-second detection, so now we're persistent, do this series of actions. Okay, and that can operate parallel to my alarm, or you can chain them together so that your alarm is what's triggering the rules or triggering the events to happen. So there's several ways to do that. In this instance, I wanted them to run parallel. And the reason I did that is because I only want the annoyances to happen when it's outside of business hours. But I still wanted to be able to track and monitor when people are out there during business hours still making a mess. And then that gives me the alarm that says this is happening, and then I have the ability to toggle some events manually during those, during the office hours if I need to get somebody gone. Okay, so let's look at how we made this work, how we defined this. To do that, we need to come to the management client. And you gotta scroll all the way down to the bottom of the management client list over here, the modules. And we're looking at alarms. And we're gonna go through this in opposite order. Alarm definitions is where you define what the alarm is and what happens with the alarm. But we're gonna start in sound settings. This is really straightforward. These are sounds that Milestone can use connected to an alarm. And so these are sounds that not plays out on a horn or a speaker. These are sounds that play on the workstation receiving the alarm, or to the user group receiving the alarm. One thing I will say is, historically, alarms have only been able to be assigned to a single user. So you would either not assign it to anybody, or if you've got a single user that's being shared between like your entire dispatch group, or that's running a smart wall or something, you would assign it to that user. But assigning an alarm to me means McKay can't see that alarm unless he goes and specifically looks for all alarms instead of my alarms, okay? But these messages, these sounds, are what plays on my workstation as I receive that alarm. So you can put in whatever custom alarm you want, of some siren going off, whatever's gonna draw your attention to say, I gotta look at the alarm, okay? All right, so let's go up to the alarm data settings. We have multiple tabs here across the top. Let's go through them. First, alarm data levels. Priorities. Is this a low priority alarm, a high priority alarm, a medium priority alarm? Or do we want to add in our own priority? Insignificant alarm. I spelled that wrong, but we'll move on, okay? Do I want a sound tied to my alarm, to that priority level? Probably on insignificant, no. Maybe on low, no. All right, maybe on medium, yeah, let's do the Windows asterisk. And maybe on a high, we'll do the Windows exclamation, or whatever sounds you've propagated in them. This is why we're doing it in backwards order, because we build it in this way. Okay, do I want to have that sound repeat until it's acknowledged? Do we want desktop notifications? Yes, let's have a desktop pop-up notification happen. Okay, all right. States. What are the states for my alarms that I want to have? New, that makes sense. In progress, that makes sense. On hold and closed. They're grayed out because these are the default states. But we can have additional states if we want. So we can do, maybe we call this, we'll call this a state 10, and we'll say passed on to police. Maybe we'll do another state that's state 20, and we'll say being reviewed by administration. You could have a state that says in the hands of HR, or whatever state you want to define, all right? Categories. What kind of alarm is this? Is this an alarm related to an access control event, like a door forced open? Is it an alarm tied to a lockdown? Is it an alarm tied to a trespassing or an intrusion of some kind? Or is it a temperature warning alarm? Okay, let's add temperature. Temperature. There we go. Okay, hit save. We've now defined our data levels. Alarm list configuration. These are the columns that show up in our smart client. What columns do we want to make available to view in our smart client, okay? Some of these don't have any data type unless something is driving data to them. Some of them, that data is generated by Milestone. Some of that data would come from external sources. So we could say, all right, I don't need vendor, I don't need tag, I don't need object, or we can take those out. Okay. Next tab across the top, reasons for closing. Why did we close this? You can uncheck the box and you can close it and not put in any reason why. Or you can force somebody to select a reason and you can force them to specify one of your predetermined reasons. So maybe it's a false alarm. Maybe we resolved the issue. Maybe it was a authorized access, or maybe whatever it might be, you know. Creativity here is where you come in. All right, hit save to add those. Now let's go look at the definitions. So this is where we actually say, this is what my alarm is. So let's look at the trash, because we already started with that, and we'll go there. Okay, Alarm definition. 1, is it enabled? Yeah. Okay, what am I going to call it? Trespassing at trash. All right. Instructions. Verify no one made a mess and clean up if necessary. Okay. All right, what is my triggering event? What sets off the process of this is my alarm? In this instance, it's an Axis object analytics. So it's a device event, and you specify which device event it is. On that camera, it's a scenario 1 device event, so I select my scenario 1. And then it's going to say on which camera. So we say it's this camera. So now anytime, or you can select multiple cameras as well. So anytime I have this event, which is an Axis Object Analytics scenario 1, where that is triggered from this selection of cameras, that is the basis for triggering my alarm.
Is that the menu where I could pull in an alarm from my alarm manager from a forced door?
Yeah, so what you would say is, you would say for a forced door, for example, that would be an access control event. So you'd say access control event, what is it? And depending on which access control system, it might be a door forced, or if it's OnGuard likes to preface all their events with OnGuard. So OnGuard door forced would be a different event, okay? And I might have that one turned off and just everything under the generic door forced. But now here's my door forced event. Now what doors? All doors? Only some doors? A selection of doors? Multiple doors? What doors do I want this to trigger on? All right? And then from there, do we care about a time profile? Maybe we only care about a door forced if it's outside of business hours. Office is closed, there shouldn't be any doors being forced. During business hours, maybe we're a little more lax about that. Maybe it's somebody's door contact is broken and needs to be repaired, whatever it might be, okay? But yeah, so the triggers, any trigger that you have in Milestone to trigger a rule, you also have that trigger here to trigger an alarm. All right, so for our trash situation, our trash scenario, time profile is always, because I always wanted these alarms to trigger. You could do event-based, start and stop. You can also do time-based and say, hey, I only want these alarms to show up maybe outside of office hours. Okay? Is there a map tied to this alarm? Yes, I'm going to use my smart map for that. If you don't have smart maps set up, you can use a basic map, and you can specify which map that device is on. Okay, I'm going to use smart map. Is there an operator action required? I'll explain this one. My alarm comes in. It sits in my list. How long can I let it sit in my list before something else has to happen? All right, so 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a week. Some of these you might want shorter. For example, if you have a panic button. If you have a panic button going off that's coming up in your alarm list, you might not want to let that one sit unattended to for any period of time. You might want to set, like, if I'm not acknowledging or doing something with that alarm within a minute, I'm going to make a loud siren in my dispatch center go off so that I can draw attention to the fact that there's an alarm there that you need to pay attention to. Something along those lines. That's an example of a scenario there. Okay, now, when we hit that 1 minute or 5 minutes, what event do we want to do? What do we want to happen? So we're going to specify the event. Now, this goes to either an output on a device, or you can leverage a user-defined event inside a Milestone, and then you're passing that off to the rules. So my rule now says, when this event happens, do this thing. Make a siren go off, lock the doors, whatever it might be, okay? But that's tied to whether an operator responds to the alarm in some way. All right? Moving on down the list, related cameras. Are there other cameras that relate to this alarm? Well, as we looked at here, I have 2 other cameras. This one view in the trash receptacle area, that's the camera the alarm is coming in, so we already get that one by default. But I've got other cameras that are viewing that same area. So here's one that's seeing the one side as they leave or approach, and here's one that's seeing the other side as they leave or approach. Maybe that'll let me capture a license plate if we have a repeat offender and we need to do something else, right? Or I can gather more data on what they're coming and doing as they come and go, right? Okay. So you can add additional cameras, and actually, I am going to add, so we'll go to locations, we'll go to exterior. I'm gonna add 1 additional camera from exterior, and we're gonna add my panorama camera out on the rear of the building, and so we can add now 3 cameras to that. Okay, initial alarm owner. Who owns the alarm? Are we gonna leave it blank, or are we gonna assign it to a person? This one I just have assigned to me because I don't necessarily want to have other people bothered by the alarm showing up or going off. Doesn't mean it can't be viewed though. Okay, so if I'm looking at alarms, we have a selection of filters. And one of these filters is who owns the alarm. So new alarms, clear filters. It might, let's see, I'm trying to remember where this is. It might be in the actual settings under Alarm Manager where you're specifying which rules, which alarms you're seeing. I'll have to figure out where that is again. I've seen it, I know it's there, but it's escaping me right now. But moving on, back to our list. So who's going to own the alarm? Where is it gonna start? What is that alarm category? Here's the insignificant alarm that we created. We also have our high, medium, and low. Okay, right now that's a medium. Here's our alarm category for trespassing. We also have the temperature that we created and the other ones. So this is basically gonna say by default, this is what my alarm is going to be. And then events triggered by the alarm. When this alarm happens, what do I want to happen regardless of whether an operator responds to it or not? Do I want a secondary action? Do I want my siren strobe to go off? Do I want a message to play on a horn? Do I want an email notification to go out? Whatever that is, you're selecting the event that's gonna trigger a rule, and then the rule follows and does the rest of that behavior. And is this alarm assignable to administrators? So that's how we define the alarm. We can, let me hit save. Same thing, like here's a facility lockdown. This is a button I have over here on the side. And when we're doing a facility lockdown, what happens? This is an access control event from an alarm category that we specified as other, and it's a, when this input is triggered, is closed, that's my trigger for this alarm. What else is this alarm doing? Okay? And so on. So there's a lot of flexibility in how these are created and what they do, but we have to define them, so it is a process to define them. Once that alarm is defined, you'll start to see the alarms show up in your list. So here were some that went off that were activations of the alarm, but did not activate the rules, the triggers to say, make those things go off, because they were inside of business hours. So they're still here for review, but they're not doing anything else beside that. Here's the ones that I marked as on hold for where we did have people out there where they shouldn't be. And then all the closed alarms from, I closed them because they were, not needed to be kept or hung on to anymore. You can have closed alarms. There's a retention profile that ties to how long you're keeping alarms for. And that is in your smart client settings. Under options, there is a section on, once it opens, this one's always a little slow to open as it's populating information. There it goes. Okay. Under I'm going the wrong direction here. Alarms and events. So here's your retention for your alarms and events. So it would be the not system events, device events, hardware events, request system monitor events, analytic events, access control events, all sorts of events in here. It might follow, oh, sorry, alarm settings. Keep closed alarms for 1 day, keep all other alarms for 30 days, and you can specify and set those values. All right. I think we've covered alarms pretty well for how they can be built. They are really just something that they're best to just start playing with one, get it set up, learn how they operate, and build them the way that you want. You're not going to break anything setting an alarm. If you're triggering a siren to go off, you might, worst case, you might just annoy some people by a siren going off, being triggered too often by an alarm or something like that. But, it's a learning process, and it's a good one to experiment with. Okay, now I want to show you Smart Wall. So I'm going to come here to my view, and I'm going to pull up a saved view that I have. Okay, let me turn this camera and look at the wall here. So, come on, camera. I forgot to plug in. I'm still on Wi-Fi, so it's a little laggy at the moment. Okay, so here we go. We're going to draw a box around our camera view up here. Notice the WISE LED Starling Q62 up here at the top with the laser. That's a fun camera. What we have is 4 TVs, 2 on either side, top and bottom, and then a projector screen in the middle. This is being run and operated by 2 different computers. Right now I'm actually showing my screen up there. Let me take that away so that we can see the Smart Wall. So my computer is no longer up there, and what you're looking at, so for those of you in the room, you've of course got the projector and the screens to look at. For those of you on the live streams or in a Stone office, you're gonna have to leverage the camera view to see our Smart Wall and how it operates. So on the Smart Wall, this is 2 computers running 5 monitors. And I need to reserve that session so it doesn't move on me. And reserve PTZ session. Draw my box again, get it zoomed back in. Okay. The 4 TVs are being run by 1 computer, and the projector is being run by a 2nd computer. There is no mouse and keyboard attached to those 2 computers. These computers are in my IDF closet. They're locked away in a rack. Okay? Smart Wall is intended for the use case of where, just like this, I've got some displays up on the wall, and I want to show video on those displays, and I don't necessarily want somebody sitting there with a mouse, opening stuff, changing stuff, whatever it might be. So when we define a Smart Wall in Milestone, we get a graphical representation of what our actual wall looks like. And you can see that here on the right-hand side of my Milestone. You guys don't get to see that. I forgot about that aspect of it. Let me pull that up real quick, though. Let me put these side by side if I can. Let's do a full screen windowed preview. All right, pull that up. Okay, so we'll get to see kind of both here side by side. Okay, so I have a graphical representation of what my Smart Wall is inside a Milestone. We'll look at how this is defined, but let me show you what the functionality is. Number 1, Smart Walls can have presets. So I can say, take it all blank. And everything just went blank, okay? I did not mouse and keyboard to that projector PC or the other 4 PC, the other 4 monitors on their PC to say, do that. I did that all from within my smart client on my laptop, all right? So, and you can see, so I'm gonna click my preset dropdown, and let's pull up our exterior camera preset. everything's gonna pull up to my exterior preset.
I'm feeling a bit hungry. Better grab some lunch.
There's our reminder to get lunch. Okay, I can take any camera in my system or any existing view in my system, and I can click and drag that out to my smart client, to my smart wall, excuse me. I'll show you what that looks like. So let's grab this. We've looked at it a lot, so we'll say the trash storage area. Here's my trash storage area view. I'm gonna click and drag. I'm gonna pull that over. Let's put that front and center right here on our projector screen. So you see that that populated all of those views. If I move my laptop screen out of the way here, you can see that that's what we got. Okay. We can take individual cameras. Let's say we want to pull a, let's grab a location, let's grab the vestibule, and let's pull up our intercom camera. And I can drop it in a single tile. We'll put it in this number 2 tile on my projector screen. There it is, it comes right up. I can also take that camera and I can say, go to the whole screen. There it is, comes right up. Just single click and drag. Now, I can, if I'm looking at if I'm looking at my smart wall going, all right, that camera, I want that camera back on my desktop. Quick and easy way to do that. If I click on that camera, on that tile in my smart wall graphical layout, it pops it up as a box. And now, it is a perpetual box that I have, and I can hit playback, and I can use it, I can go back, whatever I need to do. Okay, so presets is one functionality of a smart wall. We can recall presets. So let's say, let's go back to, here's a golf simulator preset. Now watch what this does. It cleared out my other monitors because that's what I have programmed to have happen. I could also say, this preset, don't care about the other monitors, only apply the tiles that it needs, all right? And show me cameras that look at the golf simulator. So that's what that preset does. We can go back to exterior. We're gonna look at this motion one in a minute because it deals with our third usage of a smart wall. Okay, so presets, I can click and drag cameras out. I can click and drag, let's say we want our vestibule camera. Let's put it here on the bottom right. There it goes. Let's say I want to put 3 cameras there. I can click and drag the folder, the device group that contains all 3 of those cameras, and I can drop it there. It just did the one because I dropped it. Here's what I did. I made a mistake. I dropped it on the camera tile. I only have 1 tile here. If I go up just a hair, see how that changes from the camera tile to the screen? If I drop it on the screen, it's gonna create a view that fits however many cameras are in that group up there. Again, I can click it, it's gonna pull up. All right, that's that camera. I can review what I need to, and so on. Okay, let's look at now our last method of controlling a smart wall. So I'm going to reactivate my exterior here. Reset everything back to there. For this, we're going to jump over to our smart client. So we're going to ditch our smart wall for a moment. Let me take this full screen and we can look at the management client. We want to define our smart wall. So I'm going to come to smart wall right here. It's under client, so we're used to seeing, smart client profiles and view groups. It's just right above that. And I defined my Security Operations Center wall. I give it a name. Do I want the little status bars that show my camera names and things like that, my title bars, yes or no? Okay, yes, in this case I do. Presets, I can create my presets. We can add a new preset, we can edit them, delete them. I can even activate my presets from here. And my layout. What does my layout look like? Now, let me expand out my wall, my smart wall. You'll see that I have different monitors that comprise my smart wall. So let's add a monitor. You right-click on the wall, you add a monitor. We're gonna call this one Demo Temp. And let's say it is a, we've got a projector. Let's just call it an 85-inch, and it's 16 by 9. Empty preset behavior, what do we want to do? Clear or preserve? Let's say preserve empty preset item. We'll say preserve element insertion. Let's say linked. Those are going to be your standard, typically your go-to settings on those. Okay, so it added a demo temp layout, a monitor to my smart wall. All right, so let's go back up to the smart wall. Let's view the layout. Here's that demo temp. We have to edit it. There's that monitor I just created. You'll notice it is scaled to match the sizing. I said 85 inches. These 4 TVs that I have on the sides, those are 65 inches, so our 85 is larger than our 65. Neither of them are as big as the projector screen. But let's say we installed that down here at the bottom, okay? And we hit OK, and now we hit, it's already saved. If I come back to my management client, or sorry, my smart client, now we have a new monitor there. It's part of my smart wall layout. So I can drag stuff to it. But what am I dragging to? Where am I sending that to? That's not actually, there's no monitor here. There's nothing connected to it. Let me show you what that is. In your in your smart client, what's throwing up video on these monitors is nothing more than a smart client, okay? So in your smart client, there is a section under the views. So here's my views. At the bottom of my views is a section called Smart Wall. Here's the SoC wall, the SoC wall that we were looking at. Here are the monitors. So here's my demo temp monitor. Doesn't have anything on it right now. Here's my left bottom monitor, which for those of you in the room, you can see that what's now showing on my laptop matches what's showing up on my bottom left, because that's the monitor I selected. So you have a computer, you pull up Smart Client on it, you open up the specific monitor, and you put that and full screen it on that monitor. And so now I can be hands-off, and from any workstation that has permissions to manipulate my smart wall, can pull stuff out to there. And Milestone on the back end is sending the commands of what I'm telling it to do to that smart client, and that smart client is saying, that's me, I'm that monitor, I'm the center projector, or I'm the top left monitor, I'm gonna put those things up and do it. All right, so that's the structure to that. Okay, so let me come back. We'll leave that for now, but you can see how the rest of these are defined. And if we wanted to look at the presets are specified on a per monitor basis. So here's my preset. Let's look at the exterior. Okay, so my left bottom monitor, the one that we were just looking at, it's got a Q6100 out on the corner of the building. We're looking at all 4 sensors on there. That's the preset for my exterior. If we want to look at the preset for my golf simulator, there's nothing. This empty preset behavior, right now it's set to clear, which is why when I called a preset that didn't have anything in those tiles, it cleared them out. If we say preserve, whatever was in there before will be preserved when we call up a preset that doesn't have anything that pertains to that monitor. I know this sounds maybe like I'm talking in circles a little bit. It can get a little complex. It's one of those things that you gotta sit and play with it to start wrapping your head around it. But it's a very powerful tool. Okay, where we're going with this. Let me go back to my SoC wall. Let's look at the presets. I have a preset here called Motion. I'm gonna activate it. Motion has been activated. Everything cleared, except for the bottom left one, where I changed it from clear on my preset, empty preset, to preserve. So that stayed, it preserved it. Everything else cleared because it was an empty preset. Let me real quick, while I'm thinking about it, first let's activate the exterior. We'll say activate. Okay, everything should go back to normal except the center projector screen, which is right now showing my laptop. And left bottom, we're gonna go to info, preserve. Okay, that's what I want. Top left, we're gonna set those to preserve. Yes, save. Preserve is normally what you want, but it's not always the default when you create it. And I just hadn't changed these yet, so I'm gonna set them all to preserve. Okay. Element insertion, typically what you want there is linked as well. All right, so let's look at this. Preset. I have a motion preset. We'll come back to that in a little bit. We'll see where that comes into play. I have a rule. Let's look at this rule. So I like to preface my rules with the kind of rule it is. So if it's an Axis Object Analytics, that's an AOA, and then I spell out the details of what that does. Here on my smart wall, so my rules that pertain or drive my smart wall, I preface with smart wall. And then I've got motion preset and motion trigger. Okay, my motion preset. Perform an action in a time interval within selected time in smart wall motion. So this is a time spec, a time profile, and we're gonna jump to there. When we're within that time profile, I want to set my smart wall, my sock wall as it wasn't called, to preset motion, and I want to set smart wall, sock wall, monitor, top right, using the current layout to display motion detected starting at position 1. Perform an action when interval ends. I'm gonna default back to my exterior preset. Smart wall trigger, smart wall motion trigger. Perform an action on motion started. From what devices? From a device group called smart wall motion cameras. Within the selected time, which is smart wall motion, set smart wall, sock wall, and the monitor right top using the current layout to show the device on which the event occurred. So whichever device said, I got motion, put that starting in position 2. Perform an action after 15 seconds, clear it. Okay, let's go to my time profiles. It is right now 11:42, so let's come here and we're gonna do a new one. First I gotta select it, smart wall motion, there we go, okay. And I want to come over here and we're gonna add a single time. Recurring time would be more typical, but just for our demonstration, I'm gonna do single time. We're gonna say start time 4:25, that's today. And we're gonna say start at, it's 11:43. So we'll say 11:30, and I'm gonna come and change this to 40, we'll say 45. No, I think I can get it there in 10 seconds. So 40, no, we'll say 45. Okay, 11:45 a.m., and we want it to go just for a few minutes, 11:50 a.m. on the same day. Hit OK. Now it shows up there on the calendar. All right, now let me reset here so we can all see the smart wall. So pull up this, and we're gonna pull up this. And then on that smart wall, which I have an input changing, I'm just gonna drop my laptop monitor off of that input. So we're all looking at the smart wall. Okay, we got 45 seconds. In 45 seconds, we're gonna see a change. So while we're waiting for that, what are some of the events that we might use to drive content to our smart wall? Motion. A university that I set up stuff that I've worked with in the past, their campus is entirely connected indoors. So you've got multiple buildings, you've got tunnels underground, walkways that connect everything together. You can go from one end of campus to the other end of campus and completely stay indoors. So one door unlocked somewhere in the facility gets you access to the whole facility. One night they had some kids that broke into the building and they were running through the halls, tearing signs and stuff off the wall. We had set up Smart Wall and this rule so that as they were coming in, they'd start to trigger motion. And that motion would trigger the camera to pop up, and the on-prem police department was able to see, oh, they're here. Now they're here. Now they're here. And track them through the facility. So they'd send their dispatch out and say, hey, we got these guys. They're running through the halls. They shouldn't be there. They came in through an unlocked door. Go get them. They're here. Well, they know where they went, or they know where they were, and based off the video that pops up, now they can kind of track on where they were going. Okay, my rule didn't work. I did something wrong. Something did not change, so let's go back. Let me see if I can figure that out. Today is Thursday, April 25th, 11:45 a.m. to 11:50. Selected time is my rule. Just say, oh, silly me, I didn't hit save. Okay, let me tweak this again. So we are 11:46. We're gonna do 11:47, and we're gonna push that out to 55. I'm gonna click OK, and this time I'm gonna hit save. I did the same thing last night when I was testing this, and I forgot to hit save then too. Okay, so that's one situation, that ability to, based on motion and what we would expect otherwise to be a motionless area. You could say, if there's a person detected using object analytics on my camera, once I detect a person, and there shouldn't be a person there, I'm gonna throw that camera up to my wall. A door forced. I have a door that got forced open. Well, I can have that drive an alarm, because we already looked at that, and I can throw it up on my smart wall. And I can have that also play a tone in my dispatch center, in my security office, so that I know that, hey, this should not be happening, and I need to, somebody needs to deal with this and address this. Okay, so nothing changed except for subtly. For those of you looking at the live stream, let me zoom in on this monitor. My top right monitor, which is what we defined in our rules, changed. What did we say to have it do? In my first box, I said tile 1, position 1, put text that says motion detected. What exactly are we looking at? All right, McKay, can you do me a favor? Can you walk this back loop from this entry to this entry? Just through the lobby and back, or sorry, through the lounge and back. So we're gonna see in real time, and hopefully I did this all right. As McKay's moving through, okay, motion detected, you see in that top, in that now number 2 position, because that's where we're putting all of our new stuff. New stuff shows up in number 2 and then shifts over as new stuff comes in. There was McKay walking through. It timed out, it went away. The other stuff was there from before the rule, it didn't clear out. Do that, go lobby into the warehouse and then back. So we'll see I should have taken the exterior cameras out because they get a lot of motion and they're going to trigger that quite a bit. But we'll see as McKay moves in, some of the other cameras that I added in. Okay, so there we go, we got him on that corner. Once he goes through here, we should get him again. Got some motion, there you go. So you can kind of see, you do have to pick the right cameras. And your motion threshold does have to be set right if you're using motion as the trigger. If you're using person detection as a trigger, different story. But you can see how as a person moves through a facility, you start to get a little more awareness of where they are and what they're doing, and now you better know where to dispatch people to. All right, so that covers the third usage of Smart Wall, where you're using rules to trigger an event, to drive content, video to a monitor. So with that, that's what I had to cover. If there are any questions from the online group, or if you're at one of the other Stone offices, let's dig into those now. And for those of you here at the Vegas, at the GTC, we'll cover your questions after the session ends. So are there any questions on what we've covered? Anything else random that you want to pose to the group? Give you a minute to type if you're typing here. By the way, this rule, when this rule times out, I set it to 11:55, so it'll be a few minutes, but when your rule times out, it's gonna revert back to our exterior preset, so we'll see this top right monitor change back to our exterior cameras. So got a vehicle that just drove by outside the windows. That's why our lobby popped up. Okay, do alarms push to the mobile app? Yes, they do. I am not prepared to show my mobile app right now, but yes, they do. And that's one reason why I have that trash alarm set up to happen 24/7. We're just not doing any of the annoying alerts or sirens or strobes unless we're outside of business hours. But I get the push notification to my Milestone mobile app that says this alarm happened, and there's a running list of alarms that you can view there. So short answer, yes, it is there. Sorry I wasn't prepared to show that to you though, but it is a possibility. Can this presentation be sent out? This presentation will be posted to our Stone Security YouTube channel later. Give us a few days. We could post the Teams view version pretty quick, but I've also been recording everything here in full 4K, and we can get that prettied up and maybe release a nicer version as well. Okay, next question. Can you have a motion detection event trigger a pop-up in the smart client of the related camera, even if smart client is minimized? Okay, that one, short answer is no. I can't drive a camera to pop up in a smart client. I can drive a camera to pop up as part of a tile, like we looked at the motion detection, to a smart wall, or if you want to leverage a matrix, you can do kind of some similar behavior with the matrix. But for example, if you've got an operator and they're looking at their milestone right in front of them on their own workstation, I can't just drive a video to their workstation unless they are looking at the smart wall view on their own workstation, okay? So for example, right now on my smart client, on my laptop, we're looking at a camera that's looking at the TV. But that's the top right monitor, so I can say top right. And now my workstation is seeing that smart wall view, that same monitor. If I toggle that back up, you can see what that is. Okay, so there is my smart client that is viewing the same thing, the same layout, the same smart wall monitor as what my smart wall is actually looking at. So you can leverage those in different ways. So maybe you have a smart wall set up that is just for motion alarms, and they have that open on maybe a second monitor. And then they have their normal monitor to do their normal smart client work. So we could then, in that instance, we could drive cameras to that smart wall, which is being viewed by your local operator on their own workstation. With an alarm will trigger a pop-up, but it's a little tiny box down in the bottom right corner of your screen that just says a new alarm, this alarm, whatever the title of the alarm has occurred. And so, but yeah, that's a common question. Can we pop up cameras on a smart client? And it's kind of a tricky answer. It's a yes if it's done in one of these specific ways, but generally not the way that people think of or approach it. If we change the approach a little bit, then yes. Okay, any other questions from the online or Stone Office groups? Any questions from the local group here? By the way, come to Vegas, come to the Global Technology Center, come see one of these things live in person. So so one other question, is the smart wall a separate license? The answer to that is it depends. If you are on corporate, it is an included license. It's built into corporate. If you are on expert, which is just below corporate, it is a license add-on. So there is an additional fee to add that to your system. If you are on a system below Expert, I don't believe it's even an option at that point to add on separately. So Expert, it's an add-on. Corporate, it's included. Great question. Okay, you had one here.
Yes. Can any other data or tabs be pushed to a smart wall, i.e. LPR, system monitor, access controls, or is smart wall just purely video?
Currently, you're only pushing video elements up.
The question?
Yeah, so the question was, are there other elements that can be thrown on a smart wall? We've already seen we can put text up there. So if there were ever like a set of instructions that you wanted to do with a series of events, this is happening, this is what you do. We can drive text up there. We can drive cameras up there. I can put a map up there. So I can throw a map up and I can show that. So let me come to my smart wall layout here. Let me grab my map. I'm gonna click and drag my map. We're gonna fill the center monitor with it. And there is the layout, which was my whole map, which is a combination of my map with empty tiles. Now, if I were to, I would build a map view specific to put up there that wouldn't have the empty tiles, because the empty tiles in this instance aren't gonna do any good, right? So yes. What you're familiar with seeing in context of, let me pull one up here, access control. So on my access control, where I have, let me do this. I can take this view, I can right click, send view to, nope, I don't wanna do that. I wanna do it this other way. I'm gonna open this in a new flow, let's see. No, I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna go to my smart wall, okay? Let's pull up a access control view. So I'm gonna take my access control view, we're gonna grab that, we're gonna throw it up here on the center monitor, okay? And now it's gonna change. This is a predefined view. So my predefined view now includes my access control elements that are in there. What I can't do, at least to my knowledge, because I haven't tried, but I don't think the possibility is there. I don't think it's possible to use the rules to say, drive this access control element there.
So if somebody swipes or punches in or the face for the 2FA,
I can drive the camera there based on the event. So I can say, if I have a door forced open or a access denied or an access granted if you wanted to get that busy, I could say those events, I'm gonna take that event and I'm gonna use that as my trigger to throw the related camera there. But I'm not gonna get, I don't believe, the right side tile that shows this was the badge that was used with the details there. I can use a pre-built view to do that, but I can't use the rules engine to do that. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you, Patrick, for dropping that license information there. Okay, well, we are at the end of our time. So for those of you who made the best decision to go to a Stone Security office, hopefully your lunch was enjoyable. Hopefully you're now full. You can now hang out with the Stone guys there, chat them up, ask all the questions that you didn't want to ask over a group online session. Visit with them for a minute. Find us an engineering resource there, talk to them. Find your sales resource there, talk to them. For those of you who are online, we're glad that you joined us. We hope we see you again next time. Our training next month is May 16th, and it is Linnell S2 NetBox, and we're gonna be covering advanced topics in there, and we'll be posting what those are shortly. Again, if you need to review any of this information, definitely check out the YouTube channel. We'll have that posted there. If I misstate something, I'm imperfect, so don't hold me too accountable for it. But we try our best to give you accurate information that comes from a real world experience. So I appreciate you attending, and hopefully we see you guys again next time. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining.